What's going on, everybody? Nick here. I'm going to take a departure from the usual sort of video that I do today, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the future of automation. There are some changes that are coming. Automation is going to evolve as an industry, and I feel like it's my responsibility as a content creator in the space to at least bring this up, to let a couple of people know what I'm seeing happen over the course of the next few years. So if you guys want to insulate and prepare yourself for a couple of the changes in the industry, if you guys want to jump on some new market opportunities before they even materialize, this is the video for you. Stay tuned and let's get into it. All right, so probably the biggest change coming down the pipeline are AI agents. If you're unfamiliar with the term, agent just refers to like agency, like autonomy, decision-making ability. Basically, right now, LLMs are text in, text out, but in the future, maybe it'll be a model that can, browse your computer, click buttons, converse over the phone, essentially just do things for you. So let me be abundantly clear. AI agents, as it currently stands today, are a marketing gimmick. They don't actually exist. Everybody on YouTube and writing white papers and making LinkedIn posts about this shit, they're just like jumping on the hype train. And what they're really doing is they're just connecting like the output of one API call to the input of another API call, and they're slapping the word agent on it, and they're getting a million billion likes. So I'm not going to lie to you. Most of these flows do not really work that well. I'm sure there are some exceptions. But in general, like these are nowhere near as powerful as actual AI agents are going to be. People start talking about AI agents to you over the course of the next couple of months and about how it's totally changed the game. I would be a little bit skeptical. But if you're watching this video in 2025, 2026, I think we will probably have AI agents as they are conceptualized to become today. And when that happens, the economy is going to change quite fundamentally. And I also think that obviously us as automation providers, our day-to-day is going to change too. So there's some goods and some bads. Basically right now, the reason why AI agents don't exist is because, I just want to make this super clear. These agents are chaining together actions, right? So it'll be like, hey, scrape this data and then summarize it or something. If you think about this conceptually, what most people believe is, let's say your AI models are 80% accurate or 80% successful, maybe 80% reliable, whatever the term is, but they're 80%, right? If you chain two of those together, so module number one and module number two, and you connect them, right? And they're both 80% reliable or 80% accurate. The resulting accuracy of that whole flow is not 80%. It is 64%. Because it's not like additive or something, like it's multiplicative, right? If you're 0.8 and then you're 0.8, the end result of that is 0.8 times 0.8, which is 0.64. If you were to add, another 20 modules in that flow, every time you send the output of one module you feed in the output of one module as the input of another module, the quality of your output is just going to decrease drastically. And that's why right now these models don't really work. But eventually there comes a point when, that accuracy goes from 80% to like 85% to 90% to 95% to 99.999%, where the reduction in quality or accuracy from the output of one thing into the input of another becomes essentially meaningless or negligible at best. And when that happens, you will essentially have like takeoff velocity for AI agents. You'll be able to build out arbitrarily complicated flows and then give the AI agent that agency to make the decision on how far to push that flow. So, AI models are quickly going to go, and very quickly, I mean like in the next couple of years, they're going to go from what they are right now, which are isolated API calls where you just send text and receive text and that's about it, to these extraordinarily comprehensive systems, which to be frank, are basically going to be equivalent to or better than most staff members today. And when that happens, as I'm sure you can imagine, the work that we provide is going to have to change. It'll necessitate changing. And so I see both a good and a bad. I see a good in a short term and a bad in a long term. And I'll talk about both. But the good is that I want you guys to think about ChatGPT. When ChatGPT came out, if you look at like just the search volume for AI or for automation or whatever, right around the time that it became clear that AI could do more than just go beep, boop, yes, no, and actually like talk to you, the interest and the demand for the services that we provide shot way the hell up. So there's a massive spike in demand for automation as a service, essentially. And that was with ChatGPT. Now, if you think about it, like most businesses use ChatGPT extraordinarily limited today, right? They will copy and paste the output of ChatGPT 500 times over the course of their day, and then they'll slap the word AI on their company and be like, we're an AI sandwich shop, right? Because we use freaking ChatGPT as our input and our output. We just copy paste everything. The difference between a business that uses ChatGPT like that and one that doesn't is not massive. Like in terms of their bottom line, in terms of their productivity, it's maybe like 30% or something. So it's still capable for the non-AI business to compete with the AI business. And that's actually what's happening. That's what a lot of businesses are like, right? But when AI agents hit the floor, like when they make it out onto the production line and people understand the value and the power of these things, you will not be able to compete with an AI agent-enabled business if you do not have an AI agent in your company. The difference will not be 30%. It'll be 3,000%. And because capitalism does what capitalism does, there's simply no room for companies that do not have the sort of artificial intelligence as a foundation of their business. What that means is, just like when we saw that spike in interest and demand with ChatGPT, we're going to see the exact same thing when AI agents hit the mainstream. We're going to see so much demand for people like us, automation service providers, to build out flows that encapsulate and take advantage of AI agents, that it's going to be nuts. Like, think about it this way. What do you think an average business owner would rather do? Would they rather pay their current staff member $60,000 a year, who has to eat, sleep, rest, use the bathroom, take breaks, take vacations, take maternity leaves? Hell, if you fire them, you need to pay them severance. There are rules and restrictions regarding how hard you can work them, the things you can get them to do, the ways that, you both need to address each other, the questions you can ask. Do you think they'd rather pay $60,000 a year for that? Or do you think that they'd rather pay somebody like us or an AI automation agency $2,000 a month to just maintain an AI agent flow? Well, obviously, they're going to pay us $2,000 a month. Even if the AI agent provider, maybe OpenAI comes out with an AI agent offering in a year, and they charge, I don't know, a ridiculous amount, and it ends up being $10,000 a year for this business. Even if all is equal, they would probably still choose the AI agent over the person, just because of the fewer complications and the fact that, if it works at equivalent quality, it's going to work 100 times faster because it doesn't have to do any of those things that I mentioned. And it's using silicon. It's not biological, right? So the demand for services like ours in the short term, and when I say short term, I mean the next couple of years, is going to explode. The bad news is, and I guess bad depends on your point of view, but the bad news is, when these models get so advanced and developed and they get to the point where they can do the things that, most people need an average staff member to do, or like a low level or mid-level employee to do, like eventually they're going to get so good that they'll just do our job too. Like, you'll be able to just hire an AI agent, install it on your computer, and it will make all of the connections between your platforms. It will connect your Google Sheets to, I don't know, your LinkedIn account, and it'll automatically summarize stuff from another guy's webpage, parasite SEO it. It'll automatically cold email and cold call people on your behalf, right? It'll basically be able to do all the stuff that we were planning on implementing in their business anyway. But I'll be real. The reason why I'm sort of hedging my bets and saying this is not necessarily terrible is just because, when they can do my job, they can do anybody else's job too. So I believe that on a deeper, more fundamental level, this is going to change our economy quite drastically. And we're probably going to need new rules and controls within the market in order to account for AI agents. I don't know what that would be, but if you talk to anybody that's really deep in the space, that's been working with technologies like this for several years, that's seen the exponential progression of how quickly AI is taking off, basically all of them believe what I am telling you right now, which is that, when something of that magnitude hits, like whether or not I am capable, whether or not I can compete with AI agents that can do my job, that sort of ceases to be meaningless. Despite capitalism doing what capitalism does, like our whole economic system will probably have to change pretty fundamentally if we are to continue living without just blowing ourselves up. Or who knows, maybe we'll blow ourselves up. At that point, though, it doesn't really matter, right? At least we made our bag. So the point that I'm making is, over the course of the next couple of years, AI agents are going to be a tremendous opportunity for us. And so if you think about it strategically from my perspective, I'm learning as much as I possibly can about AI agents today. I'm building out flows that include AI agents today. And even if they're just about there, even if they don't actually work, I know that when the technology improves, it'll just be a drag and drop sort of deal. I'm developing my AI agent skills. I'm developing my understanding of artificial intelligence more generally, just because I know that, over those next few years, there are going to be so many small to small to mid-sized businesses, as well as like enterprise level companies that will need somebody with my exact skill set to turn this AI agent thing, which is on the cusp of release and effectiveness, into something that can actually, 5x their bottom line. So I'm going to be making a ton of AI agent videos over the course of the next few months to help illuminate this. But if I were in your shoes, I would absolutely start picking up AI agents on your own. I would learn about the space. I would learn about how people are misusing the term, how it's sort of a marketing gimmick right now. I would read up on AI. I'd become more or less as proficient as I possibly can be, because this is going to be like, if you thought that AI automation agencies were a gold rush back, 2022 until 2024, like the demand for this is going to absolutely explode the second the first like viable AI agent hits the market, which maybe it'll be like late 2024, maybe it'll be like mid 2025, who knows? But that period there is going to be the one that I'm personally preparing for, and I recommend you do too. So let's talk a little bit shorter term than that. Another big change that I'm seeing happening, and that I think will continue to happen, is the demand for scrapers, as we know it, will decrease. Today, right now, scrapers are very in demand, right? There are a million and one things that you can do with the average scraper. You could scrape social media posts, compile that in some structured data source, and then manipulate every cell and then use it for a cold email campaign. You could scrape tons of data off of, I don't know, like publicly available databases. You could scrape stock information charts. Basically, the whole idea is you convert that into some sort of structured data, and now it's in some like format that you can just send off to a million platforms. So scraping is super mega valuable. But if you think about it as well, in order to build a scraper, you sort of have a couple options. One, you could use a third-party platform, something like Apify or Phantom Buster or something that's already done the legwork and put together the scraper, but that tends to be very inflexible. So if you want to like build a scraper of any meaningful power or like renown, you typically have to build it yourself. And that includes stuff like HTML, like DOM manipulation, JSON, maybe even like a little bit of JavaScript. Basically, you got to know your shit in order to make it work, right? Now, the issue with building these bespoke scrapers is typically the way that they work is they go off the DOM, or the document object model. And, they can work, and they, you can build a scraper in 10 hours that scrapes 1 million records a day or something. But if the target website that you're trying to build a scraper for changes even slightly, even if they like, I don't know, add a single character to one of the elements or something that you're pulling data from, your entire scraper is going to break. And then you basically have to go through, figure out what the reason for that failure is, and just rebuild the whole damn thing. And sometimes this is a fast fix, sometimes this is a long fix. But the point I'm making is they're pretty fragile. And in the future, that will no longer be the case because of the disruptions that we're seeing with AI agents, Claude Computer Use being the most recent example of this, and so on and so forth. So, models like Claude's Computer Use and a couple of the other ones whose names aren't coming to me right now show us that this will no longer be necessary. You're not going to have to invest a ton of time, energy, and resources into building a custom bespoke scraper that scrapes only this website. You'll actually just be able to give the model instructions in human language. Say something along the lines of, hey, I want you to go to linkedin.com, and then I want you to find posts that are related to AI automation. And then I want you to, click on every one of their profiles and then extract the first name, last name, the company that they work for, see if you could find the company domain, and then pump all that stuff in NML Finder, give me the result. So you're not going to have to build out this whole thing that does all that. You're not going to have to do any coding. You're not going to have to connect any modules together. You're just going to give AI that one instruction. It'll go and do it. Obviously, it's going to be slower. It's not going to be anywhere near as fast as a bespoke implementation, right? It's sort of like the difference between working, I don't know, like on assembly or something versus working all the way up in, like Python or whatnot. When you're really low level, obviously the trade-off is sort of speed to speed of processing versus speed of implementation. But still, that's going to be enough for the vast majority of people. And even if they have to pay a lot more per unit in order to do the scraping, like let's hypothetically say some future version of Claude Computer Use costs, I don't know, like $5 an hour or something, and it can only get you like 100 results or whatever. A lot of the time, people are still going to rather do that because the cost comes per hour, as opposed to hire somebody like you or I, where we might charge them $5,000 to build that system and have it all up front. So I think the trade-off in the near term will be, do I want something that runs, super quickly that I could just get going immediately, and then I don't have to waste any time. I just say, Claude, go do this thing for me, and then it goes and does it. That costs me a little bit more. Or do I want to spend a ton of time, effort, and resources on having like an AI guy like Nick Sarayev go out there and build the system for me? And over the course of the next few years, more and more people are going to shift to the former, and scrapers sort of as a service offering are going to be nowhere near as in demand. There's just really not going to be anywhere near as much value in them. So what I would do if I were in your shoes is I would extract as much value out of scraping now. You can make a ton of money building scrapers if you know just like a few lines of code, a little bit about HTTPS. Basically, if you just watch my tutorial videos and you've seen me scrape stuff in Make, you can charge thousands of dollars for those flows with no issue. So I would try to extract as much value out of these scrapers as possible before something like an advanced version of Claude Computer Use hits the market. And then I would also start preparing myself for the eventuality where that just stops being super important. I would, again, experiment with agentic workflows, start learning a little bit more about how all of that stuff works under the hood, because odds are that's what a lot of people are going to be asking for. And then, just be prepared to, be able to charge less money because the perceived value of a scraper is going to go down as well. I might also look into how security controls on websites are going to change. Like you think about rate limits today. Well, man, think about rate limits in like a year when everybody and their mom is running Claude Computer Use like models to like go out and, I don't know, scan Expedia tickets and compare them, right? Things are going to be quite different. So knowing a little bit about that is probably worth insulating yourself as well. The third big change that I see coming is business skills are going to be extraordinarily more valuable than technical skills. Now, I know that I just waxed poetic for like 10 minutes about how you need to learn more about AI agents. You need to learn, more about how to use Claude Computer Use and that sort of stuff. And I stand by that. But more generally speaking, business skills are going to become extraordinarily more valuable than any sort of code or programming knowledge, because in the future, it's going to be way easier for you to be a salesperson that uses AI to do your engineering than an engineer that uses AI to do your sales. Sales involves people, right? So let me explain. Right now, like today, knowing how to code is super valuable. Even if you know a little bit about JSON and HTTP calls and like some API stuff, and you're a no-code engineer, you're basically 10xing your leverage, right? That's one of the reasons why a lot of the people choose to work with me instead of the competition, for instance, just because I can sort of speak the technical side, but I also speak the business side. But the reality is most of the time companies are forced to choose between somebody that either knows business really well or knows like engineering really well. You get these engineers at these, top 5 FANG companies that get paid out the ass, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year for their technical knowledge. But these guys couldn't tell you why the hell they're building something if you put a gun to their head. I see this a lot myself because, I'm now, entering the coaching space more heavily, and I'm doing a lot more consulting and coaching for people that are in my business vertical that are asking me, Nick, how can I improve my business and that sort of thing? How can I grow my automation agency? And you would not believe the disconnect that I'm seeing from a lot of people that have that as a background, that are like super engineer focused, that are now trying to learn sales for the first time. It is way harder for like an engineer guy to learn sales than it is for a sales guy to learn engineering, which is really interesting, huh? Anywho, so that's kind of the trade-off that most businesses have to make. Because no code means like you don't need to become an engineering professional. A lot of the time, no code guys are kind of in the middle, and then businesses really like us, and that actually allows us to usually charge more money, at least from a freelance perspective, than like a freelance software engineer or something. Like I'd say the vast majority of freelance automation specialists make way more money than freelance software engineers. The value of a freelance software engineer is like very hard to see and conceptualize. It's usually just like a bunch of scripts and some Docker container and some server somewhere, right? Whereas the value of an automation, a no code guy, is super easy because you actually can see the flow. Like when I run it, I see the little circle go up and go, from Google Drive to PandaDoc to email, right? It's just a lot more visible to the small business audience. But enter AI, obviously. AI is already helping programmers boilerplate code, write common functions, autocomplete and stuff like that. It's also helping non-technical people like to write quick little scripts to do things for them, answer questions in like no code scenarios, debug things. If we just like extrapolate this over the course of the next years, frankly, you're not going to need much technical knowledge at all to start a business like this. I mean, you're going to need to know, obviously, how to drag and drop a module across the screen. You're going to need to know what these platforms do, but that's about the extent of it. Like you're going to need to know more about the tools themselves, and you're going to need to know about how to, about like the technical underpinnings of them. So, knowing how computers work, I think, will always give you an edge because our society is built on computers these days. But that edge is just going to decrease over time. And instead, what will increase in value over time is just knowing business fundamentals, knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to identify customer pain points, knowing how to enter a new market. The way that I see it is, if you have a little bit of like business operations knowledge, if you're capable of asking the simple questions like, hey, what are your bottlenecks, right? Like what's the shortest line path to growth? Why aren't you making revenue? What do people actually care about? You'd be surprised at how much of the time, I see these people build out massive, super crazy, sophisticated sales and marketing flows that are just so insanely detailed and intricate. And they come from this engineering background, and it's this engineering mind with 500 modules and steps and that sort of thing. But then like they don't follow up with the client 2 hours before the call to confirm that they're on their calendar. And like they're losing like 50% of the business, right? Like if you just don't understand these business fundamentals, it's so much harder for you to make it in this industry today. If we continue extrapolating in the future, that trend is only going to increase. So the point that I'm trying to make is, if you think about it from my perspective, like what should you do in this scenario? You should improve your business skills as much as you humanly can. For every unit of time that you spend learning how to do like an HTTP call or something, you should be spending 2 or 3 units of time learning how to do marketing, learning how to do sales, learning how to talk to people, jumping on calls with people, even if you don't necessarily think you could sell them. Because that is going to be the key point of leverage over the course of the next few years. It's going to be not necessarily your knowledge of the topic. It's going to be your ability to sell somebody on your knowledge of the topic. All right. More generally, the fourth thing that is going to change is focus will become increasingly difficult to cultivate. And at the same time, life will continue to disproportionately reward those who can focus. So today, I firmly believe, and I think Alex Hormozi has a whole bit on this, but like people can't focus for shit. The vast majority of people, they can't focus on a single thing long enough to make it work. There are just so many demands for our time. And it's not necessarily our fault for this, although, I'm not like totally determinist or anything. Like I think you do have control over your free will. But if you think about like the average person, it's really like the average person's attention versus billions of dollars and a dozen or more countries working constantly with a concerted effort to extract as much value away from your brain as humanly possible, to suck up your attention as best they can. So it's really logistically infeasible for the average person to like keep fighting this stuff forever. And, what ends up happening is they typically fall to the lowest common denominator. They lose the ability to focus. They typically just dopamine scroll through IG Reels or TikTok for 5 hours a day, not really doing anything. The way that I see focus is I see it as a force multiplier for both talent and ambition. Many people have talent and ambition. Don't get me wrong. Many people are incredibly intelligent and they want to achieve great things. But that in and of itself is not sufficient for you to succeed. You can have the latter and that can be great. But if you don't have the form, if you don't have the focus, then you can't make anything out of the latter. So I see this trend as increasing because AI is now entering the fore a lot more heavily than it was before. We're seeing, a lot more synthetic content, which I'm going to talk about in a minute as well. I'm seeing, the ability for these pretty monolithic companies to like demand your attention and to manipulate your attention is only increasing. I think the average person is also just losing the ability to like self-regulate stuff like dopaminergic impulses. Anyway, I don't mean for this to be like a philosophy thing or like my own personal philosophy on focus. But the point I'm making is if you think it's difficult to focus now, it'll probably be continuously more and more difficult over the next few years. So if you have the ability to cultivate even a tiny bit of focus today, you should cherish it and you should continue building it. If you build your ability to think and work without any sort of distraction, if you can, get to a point where you can sit down and work on something. I have mad hiccups right now that came out of nowhere. If you can build your ability to work on one thing and one thing consistently for 2 or 3 hours, you're probably somewhere in like the top 1% of global focus already, which enables you to do, 2, 3, 4 times more output than a lot of the people that have talent and ambition, but don't necessarily have the focus. So yeah, my recommendation here, and just in terms of actionables, because I always like to drop some at the end of each one of these, is to minimize the exposure that you have to stimulus. Build a very mindful and meaningful life. Don't just fall into the inertia of tools, technologies in our culture. You don't necessarily need the brand new phone gadget, nor do you have to be connected to 25 different social media apps. I don't have Instagram, for example, on my phone anyway. I have it on my computer for business purposes, ostensibly. But be aware of the tools you're using and make sure that you are using the tools. The tools aren't using you. Routinely spending a few hours engrossed in something like automations or watching long form content like myself, I feel is a push in the right direction, sort of against that loss of focus. So keep that up as much as you can. All right. Number 5 is the majority of content on the internet is soon going to become synthetic, and people and companies are going to want systems that enable them to join that party as well. What I mean by this is today, the majority of the content available on the internet is obviously created by humans for humans, right? A lot of the time you follow a person. Even if you follow a company, you follow the person at that company, the brand representative, the face you follow, icons or politicians or whatnot. When you laugh at a meme, you're laughing at a person's meme, right? But over the course of the next few years, that's going to change pretty drastically. We're already seeing AI start doing things like making really engaging music. AI is now capable of obviously making video. Still quite short form video, but some of those videos are hilarious. Picture Will Smith eating a bunch of noodles, right? Over the course of the next few years, that is only going to increase. And it's going to get to the point where AI is quickly going to venture into like human culture a lot more heavily. And so in, 2028, the vast majority of the memes that you laugh at might be AI memes. The songs that you listen to might be AI songs. The entertainment you consume might be AI entertainment. The point that I'm making is it'll fundamentally change the economics of content production. And as with before, AI agents entering the fore and then companies not necessarily being able to compete if they did not have that functionality, content is a marketplace too. So companies that don't enable this sort of AI production of content, they won't be able to compete either. Meaning they're going to be looking for people like us to enter that marketplace with, build out systems that enable them to multiply their content production and that sort of thing. So the way that I see it is sort of like entering a world-class bodybuilding competition, unequipped, right? Without doing any sort of steroid or any sort of supplement or anything like that. You're just some dude and you're working really hard, but then like you look to your right and there's just some 8'5" tall HEH guy, and there's just nothing you can do to catch up, right? That's sort of like the mental calculus the company's gonna have to make. So I see a lot more companies getting into content production systems, content curation systems, maybe having like a person that's still planning the content or something, or like a face of it, but then automatic systems that turn that one piece of content into 50 or 100 or 200 different pieces of content. I'm currently working on this for my own business as well, so this is somewhat topical, but my recommendation to you would be to learn how to build systems that create or repurpose or syndicate or curate content, and learn that now rather than in a few years when it becomes really in demand. Because companies are going to need this stuff. They're going to want this stuff, as the number of synthetic posts to organic posts, as that ratio increases very quickly. This is naturally going to be a place that a lot of companies go to compete. And when I say synthetic posts, by the way, I don't just mean like AI art or funny Will Smith pasta eating memes or whatnot. I also just mean like posts that weren't necessarily made by humans, but maybe like the idea was initially human, but then, it was like expanded or summarized. I mean, stuff like podcast versions of articles that are written. I mean, stuff like, a white paper turned into a 5-part article series, right? Just as the amount of content on the internet continues to increase, it'll eventually outpace consumption. Well, I think it's already outpacing consumption. And as it outpaces consumption, basically you're going to have like a limited number of eyeballs on way more stuff. And so, the market economics, or rather the forces at play, will demand companies that want to be relevant in the content sphere to use AI to generate large portions of it. All right, the last big change that I see coming is distribution will become the primary moat, not software and not people. If you know, this is something that I think Mark Andreessen talked about a few years ago. He was a lot more nascent, what's the term? He was a lot more far-seeing than I am, because this is just a realization that I myself have come to maybe like the last few months. But if you're unfamiliar with the term moat basically describes a business's ability to maintain its competitive advantage. The vast majority of moats right now in businesses, let's say in like an average SaaS company, is the software and it's the people. So if you have an amazing software company and this amazing software app, the thing that allows you to maintain your competitive advantage is the software itself. It's the infrastructure. It's the code, basically, right? If you have a YouTube channel like mine, or maybe like mostly solopreneur style automation business like mine, the moat is you. It's the person, right? I mean, I'm good at talking and great at no code stuff, which is why so many people follow me. This is similar to software insofar that it's just like, it's something unique about the business that allows it to stand out. So the ability of software and people to maintain the moat is changing very drastically. And over the course of the next few years, software, people, these sort of unique developments, that will no longer be the moat at all in the average business. The moat in the average business is going to be distribution instead. Why? Because if you think about it, AI is going to enable you to make any software you want at the click of a button. Do you want WordPress 2.0? Are you dissatisfied with this? Well, then all you do is you enter a little prompt in and say, make WordPress, but make it a little bit better. And I want you to add this, and I want you to add that. And all of a sudden you have a bespoke, customized instantiation of the entire WordPress platform at your fingertips. Do you want, I don't know, a super charming, handsome devil to be your YouTube guy? Right? Well, you'll be able to do so. You'll be able to ask AI to like create you a little talking head and then just have that talking head do your videos. The point that I'm making is that the intrinsic ability of software to maintain moat and the intrinsic ability of people to maintain moat is basically going to disappear. And instead, the number one most important thing for a business in order to maintain its competitive advantage, the number one thing is going to be its distribution instead. Basically, like its pre-existing channels to sell its product or service. What do I mean? Well, the ability to get eyeballs on your product or service is basically it. That means your email lists, your subscribers, your following on like LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, YouTube. That's your reputation in communities. It's your relationships on the internet. Your current client list, for instance, is pretty big. That's your distribution channel as well. Vendors, suppliers, that sort of stuff. That is going to end up being like the moat of a business, if it isn't already, way more so than like the software that the company builds or the proprietary database architecture that it uses or something of that nature. And what that means for us is, I don't want to, obviously I'm biased here, but what that means for you is because distribution is soon to be the only moat that really matters. If you think about it, like your job, your responsibility over the course of the next years is to build distribution as quickly as you can. That means build a brand. It means build an email list. It means build a community. It means build your reputation. Basically build as much of that as humanly possible, because the economic value that you bring to the table, I hate to be the one to break it to you, but that will soon be essentially meaningless in the light of AI. The thing that will continue to be meaningful are the relationships that you have with people, your authority, your ability to sell a product, even if that product isn't necessarily superior to everybody else. As long as you have a channel of people that like, trust, and respect you, you'll be able to sell it. Whereas the other guy that might have an even better product than you that doesn't have that customer list, he won't. So, my honest and earnest advice is to everybody that's watching this, try and build some sort of channel of distribution on your own. And that doesn't have to be what I'm doing here on YouTube. You could try like short form platforms and stuff too. You don't have to jump on Twitter or whatnot. You could build, I don't know, you could start a blog. You could join a bunch of communities and just build a strong reputation there. You could, attempt new business models that front load quantity or volume as opposed to necessarily deal size, and then use that to build up like a big client list that you could remarket to over the course of the next years. The point I'm making is as long as you're focused on distribution as opposed to like having some super crazy special product or service over the course of that period, you're going to do a lot better than the people that don't understand this concept. So distribution is definitely going to be the main moat in the future. And I see that coming. I see that already almost here today, but I see that definitely coming into the fore with AI. And if you think about it as well, logically, there's no better time than today to build a brand or to build a distribution channel, because we just talked about how the majority of the content on the internet was going to be synthetic a moment ago, right? I mean, could you imagine trying to compete in 5 years when the value of distribution is shot way the hell up, so everybody's trying to do it. And then you're also competing in a marketplace with 100 times the content, 100 times the voices. You're competing against artificial intelligence. It's almost like that old adage, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. Excuse me. The second best time is today. The best time to build the distribution channel was definitely 20 years ago. But the second best time is today. It will never be easier to build distribution than today, meaning that you probably should. Even if it's something that you only do a little bit every day. A lot of the time, the requirement distribution I found isn't necessarily in how frequently you post content or how frequently you engage with people. It's a permissive thing where if you just do it a little bit for a long enough period of time, that will eventually compound into some sort of success. So yeah, let this be your sign. Let this be me recommending you heavily to build some distribution. just because the marketplace is going to grow very, very saturated very quickly because of volume. All right. If you guys just listened to me yap for the better part of the last 45 minutes, thank you very much. I appreciate it. If you have any questions about my visions of the future, I'm not exactly Nostradamus, but I'm pretty sure most of these things are, I don't want to say they're trivial, but I mean, I think you could probably extrapolate most current changes and arrive at the same conclusions as I have. Just drop a comment down below. I'm more than happy to walk you through my own thought process, and maybe we could chat. If you have any disagreements with me on that, I'd love to talk about that as well. Otherwise, if you could do me a big, solid like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff that the YouTube algorithm loves me for, I will catch you on the next video. Thanks so much. Really appreciate your time.